Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're unpacking one of the most unexpected political earthquakes in Eastern Europe, a moment that caught analysts, diplomats, and even insiders off guard, the Belarusian coup that shocked everyone. This story isn't just about tanks in the streets or speeches on state television. It's about years of pressure building quietly beneath the surface, about loyalty cracking in places once thought unbreakable, and about how power can collapse faster than it was ever built. For decades, Belarus was seen as one of the most stable authoritarian systems in the post-Soviet space. Stability didn't mean prosperity or freedom, but it did mean predictability, the same leadership, the same security structures, and the same political rhythm year after year. Many outsiders assumed that if any government in the region would resist sudden change, it would be this one. That assumption turned out to be dangerously wrong. To understand how the coup became possible, we have to look beyond the final dramatic moments and focus on the slow erosion of trust between the regime and its own pillars of power. Economic stagnation played a major role. While the government maintained tight political control, living standards stopped improving. Wages lagged behind neighboring countries, inflation ate away savings, and young people increasingly saw no future at home. When a state promises stability but can no longer deliver economic security, cracks begin to form. Public protests were another warning sign. Even when demonstrations were crushed quickly, they revealed something crucial. Fear was no longer absolute. Each protest, no matter how small, tested the limits of repression and showed that dissent still existed. Security forces were ordered to act decisively, but repeated crackdowns took a psychological toll on officers who were asked to confront their own neighbors, relatives, and classmates. Over time, obedience became more fragile. Inside the elite, tensions were growing as well. Powerful figures within the military, intelligence services, and economic ministries began to feel trapped. On one side was a leader unwilling to share power or prepare a clear succession. On the other side was a changing regional environment with shifting alliances and increasing external pressure. These insiders faced a dilemma: remain loyal and risk going down with a sinking ship, or intervene and attempt to reshape the system from within. The immediate trigger for the coup came in the form of a political miscalculation. A move meant to strengthen control instead exposed vulnerability. Key commanders were reshuffled, trusted figures sidelined, and loyalty tests intensified. Rather than securing obedience, these actions convinced many that their positions were no longer safe. Fear, once a tool of control, became a catalyst for rebellion among those with the means to act. When the first coordinated moves began, they were quiet and precise. This was not a spontaneous uprising, but a calculated operation. Communication lines were secured, strategic buildings were placed under control, and critical media outlets were neutralized. The goal was speed and clarity, to present the public and the bureaucracy with a new reality before resistance could organize. What shocked observers most was how little open fighting occurred. Units that were expected to defend the old leadership either stood down or switched sides. This revealed a crucial truth: loyalty had already shifted long before the coup became visible. The regime's image of unity was just that, an image, carefully maintained but no longer real. State television, long a mouthpiece of official narratives, became a focal point. When broadcasts changed tone and new faces appeared, it sent a powerful signal. In authoritarian systems, media control isn't just about information, it's about legitimacy. Once that legitimacy visibly fractures, the psychological balance of power collapses rapidly. Public reaction was a mixture of shock, relief, and uncertainty. Many citizens stayed indoors, watching events unfold with cautious hope. Years of repression had taught people to be careful, but there was also a sense that something historic was happening. The absence of mass resistance in defense of the old regime spoke volumes. Silence, in this case, was not support, but exhaustion. International reactions came quickly but cautiously. Neighboring countries weighed their words, aware that any misstep could escalate tensions. Allies of the old leadership expressed concern and called for stability, while others emphasized the need for dialogue and a peaceful transition. Behind closed doors, diplomats scrambled to assess who now held real power and what direction the country might take. One of the most critical questions following the coup was legitimacy. Removing a leader is one thing, but governing a country is another. The new authorities faced the challenge of proving they were not just another faction seeking control, but a force capable of addressing the deep-rooted problems that led to the crisis in the first place. Promises of reform were made, but skepticism remained high. The role of the military during and after the coup cannot be overstated. By presenting itself as a stabilizing force rather than an occupying power, it aimed to reassure the population. Statements emphasized order, national unity, and a return to normal life. Yet history shows that such assurances must be followed by concrete actions, or they quickly lose credibility. Economically, the country stood at a crossroads. Sanctions, trade dependencies, and structural weaknesses limited immediate options. Any new leadership would need to navigate between maintaining existing economic ties and seeking new partnerships. This balancing act was complicated by the expectations of the public, who wanted rapid improvements after years of stagnation. The coup also forced a re-evaluation of the region's political map. It challenged the idea that certain regimes were immune to sudden change. Analysts began revisiting assumptions about stability, loyalty, and control across similar systems. The lesson was clear: authoritarian strength often masks deep insecurity, and once internal cohesion breaks, change can be swift and unpredictable. For ordinary citizens, daily life didn't transform overnight. Shops opened, public transport ran, and routines continued. But beneath the surface, conversations changed. People spoke more openly, tested boundaries, and cautiously explored what might now be possible. Even small shifts in tone felt significant after years of rigid control. The fate of former leaders and officials became another sensitive issue. Calls for justice competed with fears of revenge cycles. How the new authorities handled accountability would shape both domestic stability and international perception. Trials, amnesties, or exile were all options, each carrying its own risks and consequences. As weeks passed, the initial shock gave way to analysis and debate. Was this truly a break from the past, or simply a reshuffling of power among elites? The answer depended on reforms that were still uncertain. Real change would require opening political space, reforming institutions, and rebuilding trust between the state and society. The Belarusian coup that shocked everyone serves as a reminder that political systems are never as solid as they appear. Control can suppress symptoms, but it cannot eliminate underlying tensions forever. When pressure builds without relief, even the most entrenched structures can fail. Looking forward, the country's path remains uncertain. Hope and risk coexist. The decisions made in the aftermath will determine whether this moment becomes the beginning of a genuine transformation or just another chapter in a long cycle of control and resistance. What is certain is that the illusion of immovable power has been shattered, not just in Belarus, but in the minds of observers around the world. This event forces us to rethink how change happens. It's rarely sudden without cause, and it's rarely driven by a single actor. Instead, it emerges from countless choices, compromises, and fears accumulated over time. When the final moment arrives, it feels shocking, but in hindsight, the signs were always there for those willing to look closely. As the story continues to unfold, one thing remains clear: the Belarusian coup was not just a national drama, but a global signal. It showed how fragile authority can be, how quickly narratives can collapse, and how the future of a nation can pivot in a matter of days. The world watched in disbelief, but for the people living through it, this was the result of years of waiting, enduring, and finally witnessing the moment when everything changed.